This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. You're joining us tonight, every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. Lefty is in the studio, and more importantly, he's on time. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
How was your gig on Saturday?
It went pretty well, I got to say. For not having performed in several months, I felt like I was able to kind of maintain my voice, as it were, for a significant period of time. Because usually, the voice is just like every other aspect of your body. If you don't use it, it gets worn out and you're not in shape. And I felt like it held up. So, and the people who were there had a good time.
Well, good. I wanted to come. I was taken with this nasty thing that's floating around.
Mm-hmm.
Been going on lately. So
you look better today.
Well, good.
Yeah,
I'm happy with that. Well, let's get right to the show. One of the most exciting things that has happened in local politics since Branstad came out of nowhere and beat Bob Vanderplatz for the nomination, gubernatorial nomination, is this revolt that's going on with the old school conservatives versus the new Libertarian Party. And last Tuesday during our show is when that first started acting up.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who don't know, the Libertarians very cleverly have placed themselves in strong positions of leadership at the county and state level. The Iowa GOP is headed up by A.J. Spiker, who is a committed Paulophile, or I don't know, what do they call themselves? Paulus?
I couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell you either. Anyway, Ron Paul supporters, for lack of a better term, hey, Frank, you know what they call themselves? Ron Paul people?
I have no idea.
Paulus. Anyway.
The Paulines.
The Paulines.
Isn't that what the early Christians,
That's right.
Isn't that what they're
You're
called?
You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Anyway. A.J. Spiker, Steve Bierfeld, I forgot who the actual finance guy is. They're all Ron Paul supporters. In fact, they're such Ron Paul supporters that they kicked out the Polk County GOP people who are conservative, who are the old school conservatives, and made them leave the RPI headquarters and go someplace else, which created a great deal of ill will. And last election cycle, they managed to get a lot of their people into place for Ron Paul's run. Now, these very same people are coming up for election. Not to tout another person's website, but the Iowa Republican has the video from I believe it was Hardin County, where they about as nicely as you can throw somebody out, threw out Steve Bierfeld out of the meeting, and rejected his. Didn't even want him to speak, and then they elected an old guard conservative. The very same thing happened over, I think it was either Sunday or yesterday, up in Story County. Dane Nielsen was elected the chairman in Story County. And pretty much the same thing happened. They had 3 Ron Paul files running, and Dane happened to win. I think what is happening is the final schism between the Libertarian Party, which is very strictly financial, with very little. They want very little regulation of social issues,
right?
Versus the conservatives, particularly the Christian conservatives, who, want to fight for, the right to life and want to fight for traditional marriage. I think this is the final schism. The governor and AJ have been going at it over the straw poll. I think that's just one of the things that it's like being married to somebody. You talk about, how many dishes are in the sink, but really that's not the issue. The issue goes much deeper. I think that's the issue.
So are you positing that we're going to actually see something come of this? Because people have kind of been predicting the libertarian rise for a while at this, I guess we would say 8 years since Ron Paul first kind of burst onto the national scene. I think that he had that strong following in Texas where everyone is, a little, and I don't think that any people from Texas who are listening tonight are going to be offended when I say this. Y'all's politics is just a little bit different down there in Texas, just like it's a little bit different in New Hampshire, just like it's a little bit different everywhere else. But in Texas, you got your this really strong sense of leave me the F alone. And that's just, and so he did really well down there. And I think that message really played out. And here's what's interesting to me. Ron Paul gained a lot of notoriety in 2010, or not 2010. Good grief. You're going to let me go on and on about 2008. He gained a lot of notoriety back in 2008.
Well, I'm setting you up for the POW. I haven't gotten a POW in at least 2 months.
When he kind of burst on the scene and gained a lot of popularity in 2008 after 8 years of some of the most conservative, ruling elite that the country has had. Because even when Ronald Reagan was president, he still had to deal with the Democratic legislature.
Yes.
George Bush didn't necessarily have to do that very much.
No,
he had about 6 years of having complete control, and he got to swing the Supreme Court even more to the right than it already was. And it wasn't until 2006 when the Democrats kind of took power back from him. And so it's kind of interesting to me that you had this 8 years of a really heavy-handed conservative presence in Washington. Then Ron Paul, who's a Republican, so on the conservative side, comes forward with something a little different, and it really took off. And so do you think that, are you trying to say that had been there for a while, like a kind of a cavity that was just sort of growing and growing? Or
Well, the Libertarian Party, let's just go over it a little bit. The Libertarian Party are, very fiscally conservative, very fiscally conservative. They really don't, they want the government out of our pocketbooks and out of our bedrooms, and they don't want us interfering with other places. That's just a brief rundown. When I talk to Christian conservatives, they often accuse me of being a libertarian because my ardor for banning gay marriage is not as strong as it should be. Mm-hmm. There's been this schism for a while. He really started taking off when he started when Ron Paul really took off. When he started talking about legalizing marijuana, that's when you really saw a surge in his support. And these people are rabid. He had a rabid support before because he's a very straight shooter. But he recruited about half of his voting block when he said, I support taxing, marijuana, make it legal, tax it, make it a business. Well, rats, that first 10 minutes blew right by.
It did.
So we'll be back right after the break. We'll talk more about Ron Paul and the schism in the Republican Party, because it actually goes deeper. Like I said earlier, it goes deeper. When we come back, we'll talk about the other issues that are going on in the Republican Party that causes this conflict. We'll be back in 1 minute. Thank you for tuning in to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Thanks for coming back after the break. We appreciate everybody's viewing of the sponsors because they are what allow us to have this very nice studio. Our Doc and Lefty sign behind us.
Yep.
And we're very appreciative.
And the thing about this, and I don't know that we've necessarily kind of sung these praises from the rooftops enough, but J. Mac McCoy, who kind of got this thing off the ground and started, has really provided an alternative to commercial radio. Now, as a conservative, as the token conservative in this duo here, Doc doesn't want to hear me bash on corporations so much, but I think that when media is sort of localized into the hands of maybe one or two entities, that's where you start to see not necessarily a dilution in the message, but really a sanitizing of viewpoints. And so having an alternative forum where two guys from opposite sides of the political spectrum, but who are friends regardless, can come in and kind of offer up a different take on the news of the day and the politics. I think that's really where Webcast One Live has done a great service to the community. And if you want to call in and talk about it, that would be great. Our number is, I think, up on the screen, or
it should be.
It could be. And just let us know what you're thinking about today with we've been harping on the death of the Republican Party. Well, the severe flu of the Republican Party for a few weeks at this point.
They got a lot of SARS on them.
But it's bad and it's getting worse.
It is getting worse. One of the fractures that has started a long time ago is the big tent versus purist.
Right.
And Steve Dace, who is a remarkable radio man, who is also broadcast through webcast1live.com and whose radio program is exploding across the nation, is one of the people who really advocates for purity of the Republican Party. He and I disagree on that. Here's the reason why. It's a simple numbers game. You need people to vote for you. And if you're too pure, it takes you out of the mainstream and marginalizes your party. Doug Gross, I'll never forget, I went to a Republican breakfast, and Doug Gross got up there and started talking about, we need to have a bigger tent. And when we have a bigger tent and we draw people in with issues that matter in a much broader sense, like the economy, jobs, welfare, when we start talking about those kind of things up front and expressing our ideas, we win. And after we win, that's when we have the best chance at getting people to convert over and go, well, maybe my stance on abortion was wrong. Maybe my stance on gay marriage was wrong. And because you have more people on your side and in your tent, you're able to make headway better. The typical abortion debate in the Republican Party is we want to eliminate abortion, period. Well, so do I. I just advocate a different direction. I advocate taking it back a step at a time. You and I have agreed there are limits, where limits should be in abortion. We've agreed at that, privately when we've talked. You can make agreements with Democrats, believe it or not, that are reasonable. And the problem is if you want to take it back all at one time, you alienate the very people you need to get it back. And if you come up and you immediately start talking about, hi, I'm going to eliminate, I'm going to defend your right to marriage and I'm going to eliminate other people's right to marriage. All right? Whether or not they agree with you, let's say they do agree with you, they're going to step back and go, but hold on, I'm about ready to lose my house. So how are you, talking about gay marriage and abortion, going to help me keep my house? Are you going to help me provide more money? You're going to reduce my taxes so I can keep my house? And that's the schism. So when you lead with social issues, you have a tendency to lose the very people you need.
Right. And I think that's pretty pretty well that's pretty empirically founded. I guess the thing about, and I won't get into that, we're not talking about specifics at this point, but I think that what happens with a lot of folks when people come in and they're talking social issues, especially because you don't, like you made the point earlier, you don't hear a lot of this social issue talk really from the strict, committed libertarian side of the Republican Party at this point. You're hearing a lot of isolationist, and that's kind of a dirty word, but that's really what it is. isolationist foreign policy, strict fiscal austerity, and a lot of different other things that, but just sort of a complete liberalization on social issues. And so it's the old guard, or I guess the folks that brought the conservatives into power in the late 70s, early 80s, the more religiously minded, not to start trashing on religious folks here, but they're the ones that come around and say we're going to defend traditional marriage. Let's use that just as an example, kind of to make the conversation easier to understand. We're going to defend your right to have a traditional marriage. Well, I already have a traditional marriage, so I don't need my marriage defended. Well, if you let non-traditional couples marry, that's going to somehow it's going to normalize a behavior that's sinful. That's what you hear a lot. And I'm not saying that to kind of cast aspersions on people that believe in sin. I'm just saying that's what you hear a lot from the other side. And so what they're saying is we can't let sin, what we interpret as sin or sinful lifestyle, be normalized in the culture. Well, good grief. I mean, does that mean that they think that every soap opera should be illegal? Because soap operas have done a lot more to normalize sinful behavior, i.e. adultery, drug use, premarital sex, and have been doing it for longer. I mean, As the World Turns, been on the air since the 50s.
Oh, and I agree, and especially MTV. One of the things you don't hear now, Barack Obama is committed to abortion. He's committed to gay marriage. He's committed to increased welfare, but you don't hear him lead with those subjects. You don't hear him get up on the news and go, you know what, I'm going to extend the right for a woman's abortion all the way up to the age of 15. You don't hear him say things like that, because if he did, it would scare the people that go, holy cow, I don't think, you should have a right to kill your kid. Well, reverse that scenario. People don't want to come up and go, well, hold on. What if I get raped? What if my daughter is, impregnated by her father? What happens then? You're going to limit my choices in those points? Now, whether or not you agree with it, that's going to scare people. And that's going to particularly scare women. So you can't lead with social issues right off the bat. Just like that one presentation we went to, where you said, geez, where Herman Cain spoke.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yep. The first thing you said is, this is interesting, an entire night of Republicans talking about everything except jobs and the economy.
I did.
And that's the problem. That's the problem.
Well, and we'll get into this in the next segment, I think, because I'm still hearing a little bit from you, Doc, where you're saying some of the message is not palatable to some people, which is, I think, a big step for where conservatives need to go to really kind of go into the desert, have their come to Jesus moment. But I'm still hearing a lot of it's the message. It's not the meaning. It's the message and how we get it out. The communication, and this is going to be the sort of my opinion coming from the left. It's not the conservative delivery system that's the problem. The conservative message has a gigantic flaw. That gigantic flaw being it is not consistent with the way the country is moving.
With that note, we'll be right back after a minute of commercials. Please, we should call it informational business.
Yes.
Informational business remarks here for the next minute. Well, thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Doc and Lefty on webcast1live.com.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. Today we're discussing the schism in Republican politics currently. You know, there's nothing that brings about the worst behavior of people than losing. You know, you never hear a winning Super Bowl team pointing at their coach going, he sucks and needs to be fired. You always hear, you know, like the Jets, oh, well, you know, it's Tebow's fault. Well, this is what's going on with the Republican Party now. And the schism really lies along three different lines. Fiscal conservatives, which there are fiscal conservatives that have really no social agenda, believe it or not. The libertarians, which have a strong fiscal non-interference policy, laissez-faire, basically economics. And then you have the very Christian conservatives. And those schisms are all along those three lines. Now, Blake, before the break, indicated that it wasn't the way the message is delivered, like I believe, but the message itself. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, I do, because we've seen now with time after time, except in very safe districts like Steve King's district up in Northwest Iowa, or the entire state of Oklahoma, for example. Yes. You see, in these different areas around the country, we've seen that the conservative message just isn't resonating the way that it has in the past. Now, I would argue that the last time that a conservative really had the people behind him 100%, and it wasn't wholly based on, well, actually, no, I'll even take that back. It seems like the last two admittedly really conservative presidents, Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush. George H.W. we could throw him in there, but a lot of the Republicans kind of disavowed him after he didn't win his second term. So the two biggest conservative icons in the presidency, Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush, had an external threat that they were able to motivate the country into falling in line behind them. You had the Soviet Union in the 80s, and you had Al-Qaeda and international terrorism under the Bush administration. And it would be my opinion coming from the left, and I'm kind of setting up another discussion here, that the conservative message then gets sort of drowned out by this drumbeat of threat and war and security issues, so that the people will, so that the country falls in line and gets behind these presidents.
Well, but you see, I'm going to disagree with you completely.
I would hope so.
100% on that one. I agree that in order to stay in power, you need to have some kind of fear-mongering of some kind, right? But the difference between the Democrats and Republicans is the Democrats look at internal strife. They start fear-mongering about Social Security. Oh, Republicans are going to take your Social Security. They're going to start talking about, oh, they're going to take your rights away. You know, oh, they're going to, eliminate abortion. Well, simply because the Republicans had an actual problem on the outside. There was the Russian Empire. There was an attack on America, right? Simply because these events actually did happen, there was something out there. I believe you do have to respond to that, unlike the Democrats, who seem to go around and manufacture crises.
37 states, 37 Republican governors, I think, is the number. Maybe not that many, but a large chunk of states run by Republican governors passed anti-abortion legislation. I mean, that's on the record. You can no longer get an abortion in Mississippi because of the new rules down there. You can no longer get an abortion in North Dakota. There's been bills.
So what's your point about that?
What I'm saying is you kind of just said that the Democrats are manufacturing a crisis and then cited abortion rights as one of them. Well, Republican states are actually doing that. That's an actual real thing.
Well, but
it's not a manufactured crisis at all.
But my previous statement really is the crises that the Republicans have been rallying around are crises exterior.
Right, that you said were real and not manufactured.
Well, and because, well, you know, the thing is well, I'm having a discussion with my very good friend Chris Butler about unions, and she basically said, well, if you don't want to work in a union shop, go to the next shop. Well, that just sounds suspiciously like, well, if you want to have an abortion, have the right to, you don't have to live in Mississippi. Go to California. You know. So do you have a problem saying that? You know,
I don't think that people should be banished from the states of their birth just because of a public policy.
But they're not being banished. They are
effectively they are. Here's the issue. When it comes down to abortion specifically, there are people out there who are morally opposed to it, who will never ever have one. Any law restricting their right to have an abortion does not affect them at all because they would never have one anyway. It only affects the people who have, because of their own upbringing, their own moral sort of soul searching, their own very difficult. I mean, people think that all these women that want to get abortions just do it callously and with no regard for anything, and that couldn't be further from the truth. You know, anecdotally, I've been with I had a really close friend in Iowa City that had a second abortion for reasons that don't need to really discuss, and it was one of those things where she knew that she would have no support, that she had one when she was like 16, got accidentally got pregnant in high school, and it was one of those things. Mom kind of pushed her into it. The second one comes along, she's going to have no support from the dad. She's going to have no support from anybody else. You know, her friends can do so much. She struggled with it and then made a decision that she felt was right for her. And so because now if she if laws were in place restricting that would have affected her materially. It wouldn't have affected the person on the street that didn't want an abortion.
Well, but you know, now I'm not going to get into the social issues of this because
that's beyond the scope of the discussion.
Beyond the scope of this. Just suffice it to say that, you know, you've highlighted one of the schisms in the Republican Party.
Right.
You have a group of conservatives who go, we don't care if you have fiscal conservatives. If you want an abortion, that's your business. It should be between you and the doctor.
Right.
The libertarians have that view. But now the people that have a lot of the power and also a lot of the money are the Christian conservatives. So suddenly, if you take that position of, well, we're going to eliminate all abortions, you've made 1/3 of the party happy. Let's say that my numbers might be off. You've made one group happy, but you've also alienated 2 other groups.
Right.
And if you're a libertarian where you go, well, let's appeal to the broadest base we can. Let's start taxing things. Let's focus on the economy and get people out of the bedroom. Then you've alienated one of the most powerful things of the Republican Party.
It's a Gordian knot that the Republicans are having to deal with right now. And I think that after this next break, what I would like to hear from you is sort of how are you going to square that circle? Because the division has only been getting worse. And
yes,
as evidenced by the 2 meetings that you cited where they basically threw out the new guard to satisfy the old guard. And yes. I think that the Democrats had a hard time with that back in the 70s, where, you know, their interests were dominated by where unions were dominating the Democratic Party. And I'm not coming out as saying anti-union, but I think that there needs to be a balance struck because union interests aren't always the same as environmental interests, and environmental interests are not always the same as energy interests. Like,
well, I will
balance that.
Well, when we get back after the break, because we're going to take one here pretty quick. I'm going to tell you exactly how the Democrats fixed it, and I have my own solution for the Republicans. And I think you and I will agree that this is how the Republicans should handle it.
I'll be interested to hear what you have to say.
You're listening to Doc and Lefty. I am Doc. Thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. We're here every Tuesday from 6 to 7 p.m. to hopefully to enlighten you. We are on webcast1live.com. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back after a brief commercial break.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative mmanager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed rider it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed rider, it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. We're talking about the giant schism in the Iowa Republican Party. Well, the Republican Party in general, and in particular the Iowa Republican Party. Yes. Now, Blake brings up a very good point, and that is the Democrats had this problem in the 70s. And the Democrats, for a very short period of time, became very practical. After they elected Jimmy Carter, and then Carter got stomped, Mondale got stomped, and they had 12 years of Republican presidential leadership and a massive switch to the Republican Party of most voter rolls.
Yep.
They got smart, and they said, whoever brings most money to the table is the person that gets the biggest voice. That's what basically happened. Now, unions brought a lot of money, so they try to keep them in line. Environmentalists brought a lot of money, so they try to get everything there in line. Gay rights activists really brought a lot of money. So they were able to, in fact, the gay rights activists, you could kind of compare them to the libertarians currently, because they were the foot soldiers of the Democratic Party for a long, long time. They didn't give, as far as money, huge amounts, but they had such a staunch and hardworking core group of people trying to elect Democrats that were friendly to gays. I mean, that's really what I saw from the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Right. I see where you're going with this, and I'm kind of wonder.
Well, that's how they got out of the 70s. I'm not necessarily saying that's what they're doing today.
Well, what I'm kind of suggesting, what I'm hearing from you is that that there were a lot of powerful interest groups behind the Democratic Party, and boy, you put up folks like Greenpeace up against Exxon, and I just don't see the comparison there. The environmental movement has been ridiculed and doubted and called a fraud for decades. And that hurts fundraising. So
it doesn't hurt fundraising that much. Look at where they get their money. You got an entire generation in Europe brainwashed about really how things are made, where things come from. For crying out loud, they think that, spaghetti comes from trees. Really, that's where, there's such a disconnect between the more urban versus the more rural. And one of the things that happened, it's not part of the issue today, but
right.
The bottom line is Europeans give a ton of money for these supposed green projects that really all they do is wind up not helping their environment and taxing everybody to death.
Germany is doing pretty well with its green projects.
Well, but the Germans have that kind of engineering and expertise, and
it's created a lot of jobs. It's really helped them out of the financial crisis. But anyway, that's more of a specific policy thing. I guess my issue is Democrats have never, up until more recently, I would suggest to you that the money shift happened in the Democratic Party only after Bill Clinton. Only after Bill Clinton appointed Robert Rubin, a former Goldman Sachs CEO, and started working both sides of the street. The Democrats have always had a money disadvantage to the Republicans because the Republicans were the party of big business. You have the environmental groups.
Well, now that's pretty popular stuff that they teach over at Drake University. But I can tell you that whoever gets the most money has ebbed and flowed over my lifetime. When Ford was running against Carter raised more money, right?
He was the incumbent.
When Ford was running for re-election, he raised more money. Reagan raised more money than Carter. When Bush lost, Clinton raised more money than Bush. So both parties are capable of generating millions of dollars for their runs. What I'm talking about is the specific issue was how did the Democratic Party resolve who has the bigger voice? And that's basically how they resolved it. Now, what we're going to get to next here is what I think the Republican Party ought to do. What you ought to do is focus on jobs. You need to focus on the economy. You need to focus on reforming welfare. You need to basically take the contract with America that Newt Gingrich had and get everybody on board. When you get everybody on board going, yeah, everything's a lot better, then you can start focusing on the social issues. You can't keep driving away people that want to vote for you. When you're driving down the street and you see that one truck with the aborted baby on the side of it, I'm a pro-lifer. I'm believing in life is sacred from the cradle to the grave. And I'm going to tell you right off the top, that's an offensive poster. Now, what if you're somebody who's, doesn't really care one way or another about abortion and you see that poster? Suddenly you're going to think, oh my God, I got my kids in the back and they're seeing a dead baby. Come on. Let's use some reason here. This is why I say I think that the Republican message is fine. If that's what you believe, say it, defend it, believe it. But you can't offend people. You can't make people afraid. That was what the problem with Mitt Romney. He couldn't decide what he wanted to do. One minute he was a liberal, next minute he was a moderate, next minute he was a conservative. You can't do that. You have to say, this is what our platform is. You can't be everything to every man. But you can get out there and say, to the things that are important to everybody, here's our plan. Because let's admit it, most people don't care about, especially young people, don't care about the issue of gay marriage. Most people, I shouldn't say most people, many people believe in the right to life. But that isn't what they're going to vote for, right? If you come down to, I have a Democrat who's completely socialist, but yet he believes in right to life, that isn't going to determine how somebody will vote for him. It's the other issues that are much more important, particularly with a bad economy. And I think that you can agree with that.
Well,
I mean, not the policy statements, but you can agree, I think, with the strategy.
From a political science standpoint, the strategy, I guess, makes sense. But I think that I don't feel like the Republican Party has been that muddled in its message or its delivery. They've said what they wanted to say, and they said it as clearly as they possibly could. And I think that you saw between 2010 and now, after the revolt away from Obama in that midterm election, you saw what Republican president or what Republican governors and Republican legislatures around the country wanted to do. They wanted to bust unions, they wanted to outlaw abortion, and they wanted to try to ban gay marriage. And that was the focus in those 2 years. Not so much on the gay marriage stuff, but you saw it around the country. You saw these different pieces of legislation. You had these Republican governors running on, like Walker in Wisconsin, ran on a platform of fiscal responsibility, getting the house in order, creating jobs. And the first thing he did, and he didn't mention anything about the public sector union. The first thing he did was try and bust that union up. You had the governor in Michigan do virtually the same thing. You had the governors in Arkansas and Mississippi go on the record and say, "We finally done it. We finally outlawed abortion." Now, and you saw a candidate in Mitt Romney say mimic that exact same stuff. Say that exact same stuff that he would get. He was on board with Mike Huckabee's right to personhood amendment. He was on board with the immigration policy in Arizona. He was on board with all these extremely conservative policies, and he lost by 6 million votes in a national election because a majority of the people in the country object to that message, not the delivery, to that message.
Well, but that's basically all he talked about. I mean, that's all you heard that he talked about. He didn't talk. He's up there trying to talk about jobs and then says corporations are people, my friend. How do you? I mean, even though that's true, as a lawyer, that's true. How do you recover from that?
You don't, and it's true because of a really old, obscure Supreme Court case that interpreted it that way. There is an amendment in the Iowa it's either being crafted or it's about to be introduced in the Iowa legislature, where to be extended out into the country at large and proposed to the federal constitution that the 28th Amendment to the federal constitution, the definition that that only natural people, natural-born human beings can be considered as persons. Corporations aren't persons, and money isn't speech. I have a problem with that, not necessarily the corporations being people, because they're a legal entity. They have to be something.
But the part of my thing with this is all the examples you pointed out. These people didn't start out saying those things. They got elected first, and then said those things. Mitt Romney wasn't elected yet, and he went out and said those things. The other thing is we've talked a lot about this with Mitt Romney. 11 million conservatives sat home because, oh my God, you're going to vote for Mitt Romney? There's no way he was conservative. He's not even a fiscal conservative. He's not really a social conservative. He's a moderate at best and a liberal at worst.
Do they think he was worse than Obama, though? Because they hate Obama.
Well, but you see, and then we get back to the purists. The purists say, well, he's not pure enough for me. I'm not going to vote for him. That's really what part of the problem is.
So I didn't hear you just suggest that conservatives should fool people into voting for them and then establish all their stuff later.
I think they need to focus on the things that will affect the most people. I mean, you said it yourself. Yep. Most people aren't going to have an abortion. All right. So
no, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I didn't say most people aren't going to have one. What I said was a policy. That's not what I said.
Hold on. Can't you just let it go just one time? I mean, you even said the abortion laws are not going to affect people that have abortions.
No, I said they're not going to affect the people who won't have one anyway. That's what I said.
This is the problem, ladies and gentlemen, with having a show with a lawyer.
I have a better memory, apparently.
But my point is that when you don't lead with that. You lead with things that more people are going to be relating to. More people are going to relate to jobs, keeping their houses, economy. You don't hear President Obama leading out there, hi, I'm going to protect abortion for everybody. Hi, we're going to have, we're going to root for gay marriage, right? He didn't pull that out of his hat until it looked like he was getting desperate.
He put it in a State of the Union address. I mean,
when? This time.
Yeah, this time. No,
I know. When? After he was elected.
Right.
That's my point. Now, we all know
the inaugurations.
We all know Obama's been a job killer. And after the break, we're going to discuss how sequestration is going to affect jobs in the military. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We'll be back right after the break.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittiesusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
This is Doc with Doc and Lefty. We're approaching the final minutes of our show. We're going to talk a little bit about sequestration. Am I even pronouncing that right?
I think so.
All right. And what basically that is Congress said, well, we're just not going to renew certain monies, and the Pentagon has to figure out a way to make the budget meet. Is that pretty accurate? Is that how you understand it?
Well, and other things, cuts to education, other programs too. But the Pentagon will take a gigantic chunk of it because it has a gigantic chunk of the budget.
Yes. Not nearly as much as social programs, but still a lot. Oh, I don't even get a rise out of him with that.
You said that I got to let things go.
So anyway, basically what has happened is $750,000 jobs are lost. We have a carrier that's been, set aside. And the problem is that kind of ripple is really going to tell. Now, you don't want people losing jobs. However, what we've essentially done is create this gigantic social welfare program. Food stamps are at an all-time high. Unemployment's at an all-time high. I mean, the benefits, paying out the benefits and all that. You have more people than ever on disability. And you cut 750,000 jobs of people that were working. Not just the person down at the DMV who, is shuffling papers and trying to work with the public, but people that are actually putting their lives on the line, getting up every day working, all right? Putting in long hours for not very good pay, but it's something they love, and suddenly you're going to cut 750,000 people loose. What we've essentially done is take people that work and fire them and give the money that we should be giving to them to people that are staying home.
But that won't happen, though. Under sequestration, that won't happen. I mean, no money gets reallocated back into the entitlement programs at all. It's just cut from the budget.
I get that.
The folks that are.
But what we've done is created this giant monster of social programs, and now we're cutting the people that actually work. See my point?
Here's my. I was listening to this. I was thinking about this earlier today. We all know that there's got to be there has to be some sort of a reform to Medicare. There has to be. Because folks who pay in, like what I think the figures from a couple of years ago, you pay in about $122,000 if you retired back in like 2010 for nearly $400,000 worth of benefits, like 1 to 3 the payout. Yeah. Why can't we have means testing, Doc? Why is that's a conservative idea that I feel like the Democrats aren't really even listening to. If you make a crap load of money, why can't you be means tested for Medicare benefits? I don't get it. Why can't you voluntarily say, look, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat or whoever, and I've made a boatload of cash throughout my lifetime. I don't need Medicare. I mean, $2,000 a month in Medicare benefits is a drop in the bucket to me.
Now, I'm all for that, except you've already paid money into the system. You've already paid money into that, right? You should at least get your money back out.
If you voluntarily opt out, who cares? It's like paying for years and years and years of health insurance, never getting sick, and then canceling your policy. You've paid into that casualty pool for years and years and years and years, and then you cancel your policy and move on to the next thing or whatever.
Well, but see, that's the issue. You're not allowed to say, well, hold on, I don't want Medicare anymore. I'm going to cancel my policy.
Exactly. You have to, once you hit a certain age, you have to be in Medicare. I feel like there should be means testing. You should be able to voluntarily opt out if you want to after you get to be a certain age.
Absolutely, but you should also be able to opt out paying into it. See what I'm saying? I mean, your example of, well, I had life insurance for so long and now I don't need it, and I'm going to stop paying into it is great. Stop paying into it. But the problem is you're required to pay into it up until, you're 65, or unless something terrible happens to you. And then after that, you have to be in Medicare. I agree. You got to have means testing for a lot of stuff. Medicaid, disability. I think it should be much more difficult to get disability. I think that you ought to have means testing for Medicare, but at the same time, you should have the option to opt out. I don't want to be in Medicare. I don't. I should be able to opt out of that. Just like your example, I want to get rid of, or I don't need my insurance anymore. I'm going to get rid of it and not pay in any longer. I mean, this is like being forced to pay in, and then at the end, you get all kinds of benefits back. I mean, it's a Ponzi scheme is what it is, you know? So I don't think it should be that, but I do agree it should be means testing.
Right.
All right, great. Jeez. See, I don't know what I was, what I was thinking? You know what distracted me? I was trying to read Chris's response because she's really bright and I like how she speaks.
Mm-hmm.
So I got distracted. It's my fault.
Now, don't get me wrong. You're paying a tax on something that goes into a general coffer and gets paid out. If you pay in to Medicare, you're it's like a tax. It's like an insurance program, right? However, if you voluntarily opt out before a certain date with your 401k or with your Roth IRA, you pay a gigantic penalty. I feel like the incentive to maintain that tax to support the program, which is necessary for a lot of people, should be so that the incentive should be on that side. However, when you get to be a certain age, when you're Warren Buffett, and you're saying, I've paid Medicare taxes my entire life, but I don't need them. So that's my contribution. A lot of folks don't give charitable contributions and take the standard deduction because the standard deduction is higher on their taxes every single year. If you get to a certain point where you have the means to be able to take care of yourself in your old age throughout all your health problems, and you want to voluntarily say, look, folks, this is my charitable contribution to the country. I've paid in all these years. I'm not going to take anything back out for myself. There you go.
I agree.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem if you want to voluntarily surrender it, but I don't think we should be forced to do this. I would be fine with the Social Security program if it was under exactly the same rules as what it was set up. For widows and orphans, have the same percentage of people that were going to live till the age of 65 and not have it taxed. That's my thing. And how did we get off that from sequestration?
I don't want to talk about sequestration because it's really the recalcitrants that are Republicans' fault anyway.
How's that?
They set it up. They refused to do any sort of budget negotiations at the end of the year. They set up the automatic cuts and the debt ceiling stuff. They refused to come to any sort of agreement on that. Now they kick the can down the road to the end of this month, and we're staring sequestration.
But part of the problem is when President Obama comes and says, "Hold on, you're going to have a tax hike," and when we've already had the largest tax hike in history, I think the Republicans should say we've already had a tax hike. Now it's time for spending cuts. If President Obama isn't going to come in and go, "Well, listen, we need spending cuts," then. What's the point of negotiation?
He's had the greatest reduction in government jobs as any other president. So yeah. What else do you want him to do? Start kicking people out in the street?
Well, the problem is the original point is the military and how that's going to impact.
Right.
You're going to have it isn't just the 750,000 jobs. Mm-hmm. It's the people that maintain the ships. It's the people that work in the shipyards. It's the people that package the food, grow the food. It's going to be a giant ripple effect. It's going to be worse than even the effect from GM or Chrysler. Yet, they're not getting the help that they need. We've kind of talked a little too much. Blake and I haven't been at each other for a while. We haven't
because we've been doing so well with guests and stuff.
We have been.
We had 2 weeks in a row where he didn't have any guests, and that just it turns people loose.
It does.
It turns everyone loose.
So the next thing we're going to talk about real quick is the ammunition shortage. Apparently, all the people like you were talking about, like in Mississippi, they're banning abortions. In Colorado, they're banning guns. The Magpul, which is a giant gun manufacturer, is leaving the state. Other states have enacted similar legislation like New York. And what that has done is created a giant run on ammunition. Mm-hmm. Our friend Mike Sporer at JLM Gun Shop, I went down there to pick up some 9mm. He'd sold 38 boxes. He told me in less than 3 hours. So his allotment was 38 boxes, and it was done. His shelves that normally were filled with ammunition is all gone. And the AR-15 assault rifle, which is a popular rifle that the left likes to target, has gone in the last 3 months from $995 to $1,995. And he can't keep it on the shelf. So, it's one of these things where, the ammunition's getting really short. Pretty soon, the only people that's going to be manufacturing ammunition are the Russians, and they're going to be just like drugs. It's going to turn into a situation where drugs are rampant and the Mexicans are killing each other for the drug lines. It's going to be the same thing with ammunition. So, what do you have to say about that?
About
the lack of ammunition,
people killing each other to get bullets.
Yeah, I think
what are they killing each other with?
Well, but
I mean, wouldn't that be a waste of bullets?
Well, it would, but you understand my point. I mean, he's creating this market, and at some point, he's going to start creating a black market if you continue to ban weapons.
He hasn't banned any weapons, though.
No, he has not, but other lefties have.
Well, here's, the issue.
I mean, just like that's what I was saying.
Right.
Just like Mississippi.
Here's the issue with the legislation. First of all, the states have been so freaked out by what's been happening around the country with the gun violence and sort of like a little bit of a spike. And you see these spikes every once in a while throughout the history of this country, where you be relatively quiet and then it'll spike for a little while. And they're getting so freaked out that they feel like they need to do something, especially after a bunch of kindergarten kids get shot. So they're taking it on themselves, because just like with immigration, just like with the fiscal mess, just like with union reform and fair pay, the federal government has made itself completely incapable of handling large pieces of legislation that it really is in its purview. I mean, if we're going to have a Second Amendment to the federal Constitution, it's the federal Constitution's prerogative to deal with the regulations related to that amendment. Just like with the FAA and the FAA, good grief, the FCC and the First Amendment. The federal government needs to act here, because we can't have 50 different gun rules. If you say Iowa has this really, and that was one of the good points that the Republicans make, is that Republican folks in Iowa make, is that if Iowa goes, really, really hyper strict on gun legislation and Missouri doesn't, people make a run for the border and the guns come in over the border anyway. And that bogs down the criminal justice system and so on and so forth. So the federal government needs to get its act together and take care of this gun legislation. The reform's been fairly modest so far, but it needs to figure out something, because I feel like the runs that you're talking about, the shortages that you're talking about, because people are freaking out over what state legislatures are doing, that the state legislature should cool it and let the federal government do something and maybe make this, and maybe even the whole thing out. That's what the federal government's there for.
All right. So you think if there are going to be modifications to the Second Amendment, it's not a 10th Amendment issue, but a federal.
It absolutely has to be. It absolutely has to be, because the 10th Amendment only talks about powers that weren't enumerated in the Constitution or reserved to the states. The Second Amendment, as conservatives are very, very willing to tell you, is an enumerated right expressly provided for in the Constitution. And so, if the federal and the federal government has prerogative over that, in my opinion, I'm not a Supreme Court justice.
You bet. Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We want to thank our sponsors. Well, I want to thank Frank, our producer, for producing this segment. Thanks everybody for tuning in. You know who was listening tonight? Our friend Brad Zahn was listening.
Oh, well, great.
Yep. And then
Hi, Brad.
And our friend Tim was listening, and my mother, and all kinds of people. Does your mom listen to this?
I have no idea.
Oh, you got to call her. Tell her to listen.
She probably is driving home from work. She's got like a 45-minute drive in rush hour traffic home each day between 6 and, well, maybe she might be just getting home at 6 o'clock. And if I was in the car for nearly an hour every single day driving home from Shakopee to Minneapolis, I might listen to my son babble about politics. I'm just not going to do it.
All right. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week. from 6 to 7 p.m. on webcast1live.com. I am very hopeful that we can get maybe AJ Spiker, Steve Beerfield, somebody to show up. Don't forget this weekend to celebrate life. It's over at it's with Mike Huckabee. You can look on the Iowa GOP website. Lefty and I will be there. We'll bring you a report next week. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
Good evening.